So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series, we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across the industry, covering a wide variety of topics from skills and careers through to technical overviews and soft skills. So whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. It really is appreciated. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, like and a subscribe. That would be absolutely awesome. Okay, so my next guest is all about data and data analytics with AI, from data systems to data science, data engineering. She's a VP for DevX at Treeverse at the moment, a public speaker, an author, and she can be found across the socials, helping us all understand data and AI concepts a little bit more. So I'm super thrilled to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With, Adi Polak. Hi there, Adi. How you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. How are you, John?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just getting over a little bit of a bout of the flu or the cold at the moment that's going around. But no, on the whole, not too bad. And it's a holiday weekend here over in the UK. So extra long weekend for me this weekend.
That's fantastic. Can't wait for holiday.
So, Adi, first things first. Thanks so much for giving up your time and coming on and saying hello to me. So we got some cool areas of data and machine learning to get through today and, you know, obviously have a little chat around. But before we get to that, I don't know if you want to give yourself a little bit more of a broader introduction and let us know where you're working at the moment and what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Vice President of Developer Experience at Treeverse. I contribute to FS, open source. We're working on a lot of exciting content and working with the community and working with the open source ecosystem and our partners. I'm also writing a book about scalable machine learning with Apache Spark. What's more? So contributing to open source, working full time, writing a book. Sometimes I will go to walks into the beach at my spare time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm a foodie, so I enjoy all different types of food and exploring different cuisines.
Nice. And yeah, like you say, you just roll those things off the tongue. Like you work full time, you've got a family, you do all this work for community as well. It's, I think to a lot of people, they don't realize the amount of work that entails. And I'm sure everything you're up to at the minute is all kind of really cool and interesting stuff. So, I mean, in terms of the area where you're working at the moment, so obviously you're in a developer relations role, working with community, I'm assuming quite a lot of the time in terms of data, AI, machine learning. I mean, is there any way of summarizing that up? Like, why should we, in this industry today, why should we be interested in data and machine learning? What are those elements that kind of go into making up that ecosystem of products or services? And why is it important to us, Adi?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because it speaks about the business value, right? Because as companies, we often, most of the companies today will work for profit. So when you start a company, you're a startup, or even if you're a huge corporate such as Microsoft, everything that you do is for profit. And if you can unlock some value, some potential in data, or unlock potential in analytics or machine learning that can actually drive business growth and value to the business, this is a good place to invest. And we see a huge growth in different leaders understanding that they can unlock new businesses and new potential and new values using insights from data, using wisdom that they can create with machine learning, and creating products sometimes that are more tailor-made for the customer, but actually learning what the customer wants and needs. So all of that together with the combination of data, analytics, and AI can create business growth, basically. And this is why we're seeing this huge, tremendous trend in the industry of the machine learning and data, and also huge demand for people as well.
I was going to ask about that. I mean, certainly, in terms, we had a quick chat just before we hit record there, but in terms of my own kind of exposure to data services and machine learning, it's kind of, the barrier to entry to those kind of technical capabilities has been lowered by cloud platforms in my instance. So the work that I do with customers, more and more questions are being asked in and of that area. How is the data space at the moment? And certainly from a skills point of view, what does that landscape look like, for people? What kinds of people is that part of the industry looking for at the moment? Have you got any insights on that, Adi?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with one of the CTO in the startup we're collaborating, partnering with, and it's always about, hey, I want to build a data team. I want to bring in, experienced people from the industry. Which technologies, which technical acumen should I look into? And I always think, like, what should be the most simple thing that a skill that an individual needs to have in order to learn the next platform or gain the next skill. And often in the space of data, that would be around SQL. So understanding SQL, understanding how to query tables, understanding how to model the data into tabular format can be a very good place to start, because many companies would already have data in SQL, in databases, on the cloud or on-prem. And so that can be a really good entry point for individuals who want to break into the data career or machine learning career, because this is a skill that they will need in all different areas of data analytics and machine learning. And then after that, it very much depends on if they want to write code, if they need programming for the work. Sometimes there would be a lot of tools that the company can adopt that are more in the space of no code, low code that we see that a lot of cloud providers offers. So sometimes I won't even need to know how to write code, but I need to have a good brain to understand how I'm connecting the different pieces. So using a drag and drop over the UI, I will be able to create this transactions on the data and on the tables in order to create, to automate some of the actions that I want to make over the data to extract the insights. And it can go many ways, depends on the individual, what they want to do, what excites them, which in my opinion is really important, because at the end of the day, we need to keep the momentum, so we need to do things that excites us, where we understand the business impact and we can actually relate and connect with. And also what's available in their region, in their location. If they live in an area where there's a lot of financial institutes and they want data people or they want analytics people. So maybe even gaining a little bit of domain knowledge over the data, what it means to work with financial data, can be a really good leverage for that individual. And it requires, just setting the mindset saying, hey, I live in that space and this is the domain, this is the area, the vertical, and in my area, there's a lot of demands. So I might invest a little bit into learning what financial data means, so I can gain that leverage from a career point of view.
Yeah, it sounds very much like the fast pace of change of the industry, I suppose, is kind of opening up the possibilities for people to really grab their career by the horn, so to speak, and look into those areas of interest. And it sounds as though it's very similar across the data space at the moment, with the amount of opportunity being generated by the different tools and features, and I guess the whole innovation piece that kind of surrounds the ability to create a machine learning model on a particular data set or data sets. Are you able to describe, because I guess a lot of people would understand, right, okay, machine learning is this thing. Are you able to describe that in a little bit of detail for me, Adi, in terms of what actually is machine learning?
Yeah, sometimes people think it means that robots are going to take over the world, and we would be left out without any work or opportunity to do anything, because everything will be automated and robots will do everything for us. But this is not the case, actually, and certainly would never be. And actually, being able to use machine learning can help us automate and free some of our time to, so we can put our brains into bigger things and bigger challenges. But before that, let's understand what is machine learning a little bit. So machine learning, it's to build a machine learning model, we need to have data to ingest it with. So we need to have data to train the model itself. And we're training the model by ingesting the data into a machine learning algorithm. And then the machine learning algorithm would do multiple extrapolations, try to assess what exists there, runs a couple of statistics, and then produce a model that tried to show us or give us a set of rules that we want to take in order to create some prediction over new data entry that we just ingested. So let's say we're trying to build a machine learning model that's going to predict what's going to be the weather for tomorrow. We can look at previous months at the same time of the year in the same location and say, in the sky or in the atmosphere, we saw so-and-so clouds for so-and-so size, and this is about the time of the year where it's mostly rainy, for example. So we can make a prediction saying, because of previous insights, because of previous data points that we have, it's most likely to be that there was going to be rain today or tomorrow as well. So it's basically, it provides us with a collection of rules that can help us make prediction or make even classification sometimes, depends on the business questions that we have at hand. And underneath the hood, like I mentioned, it's statistics, it's mathematics, it's extrapolations over data that many times as human, we do it without even understanding that we're doing it, just because we're so accustomed to it. This is why it's called machine learning, because it's trying to mimic the human brain, how a human would think, and then so how a machine would learn and think at the end. So I think it's really interesting. And one of the challenges that often people have, specifically with understanding machine learning, that sometimes it seems like a black box. We look at the algorithm, we know we need to ingest data, and we know we get a model at the end. And that model is going to be used later on to run prediction on new and fresh data. But we don't really know what happens in that black box. So it makes it sometimes hard for us to assess the accuracy and the quality of the model itself. And in my opinion, this is where it's starting to get interesting. Like, how do we know that the set of rules, the machine learning model that we got at the end, is going to provide us with accurate predictions if we'll use it for real business cases?
Sure. Yeah, I read somewhere recently actually around kind of those unconscious bias being in data sets, and how do you kind of, like you say, the quality of your data, how do you, I mean, what kind of things are going on in that space at the moment, Adi, in terms of how do you assess the quality of a data set that's going to train a model? Are there other tools being built? Is it something that's going on in culture or society? How do you do that?
Wow, this is like one of the things like everyone trying to understand right now in the ecosystem. So I think it's a fascinating question. It's so from my perspective, it's a collection of things. It's understanding the data domain. So as a human, when I look at the data and I have a good understanding of where this data comes from, I should be able to test that it's actually covers well everything in the ecosystem that I'm looking at. So have the good variety, the good diversity, and everything that I would need in order to create a model that actually represents the world. Because this is the goal of the machine learning model. In the end, they need to make predictions and they need to make assumptions on how a new data entry means in the world, based on even after it was built using a very small chunk of data. So this is one area of quality. We need this domain expertise in order to assess, what this data is really good. The second thing is processes. Like, how do we bake these processes into the machine learning workflow, knowing that we have diverse set of skills of people? Because often in organization, there won't be one person that develops everything, like the end-to-end of the machine learning workflow. We will need a set of people that works together, where each one of them brings different skills. So how do we make sure we're baking the data quality into the process of the data to assess that the data has all the good qualification that it needs in order to help them work together and bring that? And recently I've seen in the community someone mention quality gate that they introduced quality gate into the pipelines, or actually one of the processes they say, hey, this is the gate, now I'm running tests on all the data that I have in order to see that it reflects well what I'm expecting. And they provided a set of expectations, a set of criteria for their data that their data needs to pass before it injected into training a machine learning model. So I think it's really interesting because A, data understanding, data domain, B, new processes and maybe new tools and automation, and also being conscious about it. So culture, so making sure we're talking about it, raising awareness. People know that they need to test the quality of their data. Not a lot of people are aware of that. They assume that because they have access to a specific data set, it means it's good, right? I mean, how can you tell? What is the benchmark?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really, really cool the way that you're framing this about the kind of things that I guess as an industry and a society, we kind of have to come together now, because we are, I think I had a chat with somebody about this a little while back, where all of a sudden you've gone from this realm of just being a technical subject matter expert, where you're focused really on a technical challenge, to now, you now have to be aware of ethics and bias and, you know, so on and so forth, all these social impacting things. All of a sudden, we're looking for those people with those deep technical skills, of course, but now they have to be not just deep technical skills, but also associated with all these other domains that kind of affect these areas, which, you know, it kind of goes into this thing. I don't know if you're finding this, but lines are becoming a lot more blurred. You know, are you seeing that in the data and AI space, Adi? I'm presuming so.
Yeah, for sure, especially around the skill set. Yeah, so because I have a data team and this team is building the machine learning workflow or the machine learning pipelines, and they come from different backgrounds. So how can we help them work together in order to produce the right product and also be aware of potential biases in the data, for example? Yeah, so it's really interesting, I think. How do you see it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's one of these things at the moment in the industry where there's so much going on. You know, especially you know, but it's good stuff. Obviously, it's great the technological advances that we're seeing at the moment. But I think it's just culture and people trying to keep up to speed with it as individuals, trying to learn these new technologies, but also be aware of what this new capability can actually mean to society. It's such a deep conversation at times, and so you're trying to find people that are aware and willing to learn at quite a fast pace of change. That's what my feeling is at the moment. So I mean, can we scale this back a little bit, Adi, in terms of, you know, we tried to answer what the question was of machine learning, and you kind of really put it down, you know, quite succinctly into what machine learning is. When it comes to cloud platforms, have you got any pointers for people to, you know, how do they break into this space? So you talked about understanding SQL. I mean, it's a great, you know, kind of basis to have with a relational database structure and how to query and, you know, what the components of a data model might look like. I mean, I'm seeing a lot more use of non-relational databases like Cosmos DB and MongoDB and those kind of document type JSON library or databases for things like IoT projects, and, you know, you've got this massive data. Are there any different ways of trying to kind of frame those two different kind of solutions, Adi, in your experience, or what would be the things that people should look out for or pick on when they try and produce these solutions in a cloud platform, for argument's sake?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I mean, there's a reason why there's these two different domains of SQL and NoSQL, and why were they created. And my cat came to say
There's
hello.
your cat now, yeah. Mine came to say hello a minute ago, yeah.
Hey, Chupi, you're here to study about NoSQL. Yeah, so there's a reason for that. And this is because there is structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. And when we're looking at tabular data, it's very easy for us sometimes to make it fit into the SQL world, and to take actions based on it and to run SQL. And then we have the unstructured or semi-structured data. So semi-structured would be, for example, JSON entries or JSON rows. And unstructured would be documents, because there's no structure. It's just a bunch of text. How do you make sense out of, a very long text? And so each one of the solutions there gives an answer to a different data type. And we need to understand what type of data we want to work with, and also what type of operations, what type of logic you want to run on top of it. For example, with documents, maybe we want to be able to index them according to some occurrence in the document to make it queryable or searchable according to a specific term or according to a specific timestamp that appeared in that document. So that requires a slightly different logic and slightly different tools, because we don't want to build it from scratch. And this is where a lot of cloud services, such as Cosmos DB and others, comes to play and say, you know what, just ingest the data to our database. We will index it. We will work it through. Of course, we need to configure it. We need to understand what we're doing. And then we'll give you the ability to query that data based on the configuration and what you need. So I think it's really interesting, because it's, say, instead of you as a developer need to figure out how to make sense of, a document file, for example, or a bunch of documents, we will do it for you. Just make sure you're ingesting them to our NoSQL database. And I think it gave birth to a lot of other dedicated or very specific databases as well, because with each requirement that we see, we understand that sometimes in the scalable data space, we cannot use only, it means that we need to change our solution and how engineers build that specific solution. And this is why we see a big variety of tools that are available. And also there is a notion of cap theorem, etc., which is the more advanced concept of how do you save and maintain and work with data and the level of consistency and availability and partition of the data, where you cannot have them all three, and you have to make intentional decision on which one you wanna get. And sometimes in architectures, we saw that there would be multiple databases, because each one of the databases provide different capabilities and different promises. And because specific products need to be able to slice and dice the data, or need to be able to support multiple and different type of sources of data, then the architecture need to be able to support different types of databases.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, we've got this plethora of options in terms of not just where we store our data, but how we store it and how we can query it. I see. So really it comes from that. I guess, being a developer to a certain extent is understanding what the capabilities are of the particular thing that you're developing. I guess it's just another example of where those lines are blurring again. All of a sudden, a software developer may have a reasonable amount of knowledge towards data systems, but do they need to become that data expert? Arguably not, but equally, there's certainly a blurring of lines again, where things are going in that space. I mean, it's fascinating talking about all the different areas of data, and certainly data science and machine learning and where that's going in the industry at the moment. But I mean, you are working a lot in community, like you say, for the company that you're working for at the moment. I mean, can we switch tracks slightly there, AD, in terms of, community work and community effort? What does that mean to you, and why have you kind of taken a career in that space almost?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm a big believer in community. I believe the community helps us thrive and grow and learn beyond our immediate team. So often we work in a team, we work in a company, and we have access to the knowledge that exists in our company, in our team, or in our immediate environment. And the beauty about being part of a community is, especially an online community, is the possibility to interact and work and learn from other people from other companies that might have a similar challenge, or they might expose to other challenges, which actually you yourself can be exposed to it through them by learning and having a discussion with them on it, and by actually accelerating your career and accelerating your knowledge through others, just by being part of the community, asking questions, trying to answer questions, or answering questions, or even raising more questions to an already existing questions, and taking active part in that shared learning experience, which I think is phenomenal. Like, if people really want to double down and really enjoy the technologies and the space, the best way to learn is by being part of a community, because there's so much you can learn at work. There's so much your peers and colleagues can teach you, rather than just expanding beyond that group is, I think, can give you a great acceleration, in my opinion. And also, I think from what I've seen, there's a lot of good people in communities. People want to share. People are excited about what they're doing. Sometimes they will be frustrated, and that's completely fine, because they tried some tools, they didn't like it, and they get frustrated and they share it, and that's all good, because you can learn from it as well. That tool had so and so issues. Maybe when I'm thinking about introducing new tools to my team, to my architecture, maybe I should reach out to that person and ask them, why did they get so frustrated about it, so we can have a good conversation and actually learn from each other's experience. And people are very much into sharing. So people that come to the community wants to share. They want to grow. They understand that. And I'm a big believer in open collaboration as well. And this is like one of the essence of the community. You can collaborate with other people. So for me, I've been working and volunteering with community for more than 10 years now. Started very early and really loved it. Love the fact that I can contribute, I can help, and I get back because other people helped me along the way. And it created some very strong connections and relationships with people. I never thought, I would even be there at that stage, get to know them. They're from different cities, from different companies, from different countries. So it really gave me personally a great benefit of building relationships beyond where I am, and learning from others, and also teaching, because I enjoy teaching as well.
And that's an amazing summary of things there that community gives you, Adi. I think you're so right in terms of that shared learning. It's almost learning without realizing you're learning. You're just having a chat with a bunch of people, friends that you've kind of, like you say, that you've become acquainted with, maybe over the last few years, maybe longer than that, but certainly over the social media platforms, being able to build these relationships up. It almost seems like you absolutely are learning, like you say, from either people that have had failures, or people's good experiences, or people promoting certain product sets. I find without even realizing, you're reading some of these threads and actively taking part. And I think that's the key, isn't it? Is that you actively take part. You talk about things and you get a little bit back. And it is very profound. And I completely agree with everything that you just kind of demonstrated there, Adi. It's such a great place to be. And I guess the point is, if you're watching this video and you're not part of community yet, then have a think about jumping in. And it's easy to get started, Adi, in terms of getting involved. Just get involved.
Yeah. I'm curious for you. I know you've also been doing and being part of the community for many years now. How did it start for you?
Yeah, it was the lockdown that did it. I mean, I think I'm of an older generation, Adi, so it was one of those things where I'd always known about community, but never actively been part of it, because I didn't really understand what it actually meant or what it was. And I think when we got locked down, obviously globally, I thought I'd take the time and effort to turn some of my now spare time into actually exploring community, seeing if I could do some blog posting and videos, and it led to this, speaking with, like you said, awesome people from right across the globe about different parts of the industry that we all work in, and really just gleaning those insights. And I thought we'll just recording those as a show like this to hopefully help other people out, or the people that I'm speaking with, the guests that I'm speaking with, help those people out to get their message out, to hopefully a wider audience. So it's just, and that's how it started for me. And it's one of those things, I think, as we get back to normality, the sad thing for me is that I got involved with community when I had a lot of spare, we all did, we had a lot of spare time. But now things are getting back to normality. I'm having to kind of put things back. It's like, well, I can't, so, and that's a sad feeling because, it's like you've just alluded to there, community is a wonderful place to be. So obviously getting involved at that level and keeping up that involvement is an important thing, I guess, when it comes to that whole work-life learning balance. I mean, do you see it like that, Adi, yourself?
Yeah, I believe in the long life, being a long life learner, and there's always room for growth and growth mindset, and doing retrospective on the good things, the bad things, and really learning from our experience, and other people's experience as well, of course.
Absolutely. And it kind of segues nicely into the last kind of topic area that we've got for this show. So, I mean, in terms of all this learning that we're doing, whether it be part of a community or we go off and we study for a particular topic area at a great detail, what's your opinion, Adi, in terms of why are we doing all this learning? Where are we going in the industry? I mean, I guess the question would be, what are your next big bets in tech over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, these are great questions. So I think we're going to operationalize machine learning at a much larger scale. We've seen different iterations during the last 30 years on machine learning, starting with very small scales all the way to kind of a rule-based decision trees, like the more simple machine learning. And I believe now we're entering the world of scalable machine learning and operationalizing machine learning, and making sure we're also entering live learning as well, which means that the models themselves are being adapted on the fly based on changes in the data, so data drift, which I think is really interesting, and then connecting it to actually IoT devices, so how we can make devices smarter, how we can bake these models that we build on using a huge set of data into small devices. So how we can produce a relatively tiny footprint for the machine learning model itself, so we can inject it into IoT devices, which I think is going to be extremely interesting. And in the space of cloud specifically, there's a lot of conversations on how we can trust data and make data more secure. We know that the cloud enables us to work with scalable data. We have object storage, we have Azure Blob, kind of an infinite amount of storage if we need to, relatively at a low cost. And the question is, how can we build systems that we can trust data? So to bake these data quality processes into it, or to bake these governance and auditing capabilities into it, which I think is really going to be the next phase, because we figured out big data. We know how to scale it. We can we can store very large set of data on Azure Blob. But how do we make it secure? How do we govern it? How do we audit it? Everything. How do we want to access it? How can you trust it?
Those are some cool areas, I think, aren't they? They certainly are. It's like you say. I mean, to kind of bring this episode back to the beginning almost. We know that data is exponentially growing with every new app, every new service, new system, and the ways that we gather data is exponentially growing with sensor information and devices all around us, and there's no stopping that. It seems that is going to be the way that we're going, especially with mixed reality and virtual reality and those kind of tool sets. almost reading the digital world in from the material, the physical world, and overlaying them. There's just going to be such a massive explosion, and that's really cool that you see that. So I think in terms of what you said at the beginning is every business to be able to almost commercialize their own data or their own insights or their own things that they're producing, that gives them another angle to their business model, I guess, is from a commercial perspective. So big data and the ability to interact and analyze and do something with that is there, and the platforms are there, and we're all very quickly trying to learn these and learn the best way to use these. I think at the moment, Adi, I'd be assuming at the moment, where some people have obviously hit the nail on the head and have been doing it for years, and I would suggest, we're still on that upward trend, I think, at the moment with, businesses realizing the benefits of these kinds of technologies. But yeah, I think I echo, that's a really cool area. So in terms of data governance and data security, clearly we've seen too many negative news reports out there of data breaches and loss. And I guess that's going to become even more prevalent as data grows even more exponentially than it already is. Yeah, I guess I'd be right in assuming that's where you're at the moment then, Adi.
It's not exactly, it doesn't speak about security specifically. It's I'm contributing to an open source tools that enable different operations that for using auditing, for using governance, for GDPR, etc., on top of the data.
Sure.
So it's a generic tool that provide Git-like version control or Git-like version capabilities on top of data, similar to what we have with code. We have version control for code, right? We work with GitHub. We can push to GitHub, etc. We can create multiple branches out of our main branch or our main code and repo. So similar to that, we can do with data. And once we're able to do that, we can govern it. So it's a more infrastructure tool that enables larger capabilities, which is based on the concept of Git, basically.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you see this becoming more and more of a thing now over the coming years, then, in terms of solutions and tool sets to do some of that management to help us all, I guess.
Exactly, because we figured out how to manage our code. We have Git, we have GitHub. We know how to work it out. We know how to build CI/CD when we need to push. We need to deploy to production to run the testing. But how do we do it with data that exists in our data lake, right? So we have a lot of data in the data lake, and we constantly ingest it. We build a data pipeline. We're using it to ingest data into analytics and into machine learning. But how do we enforce quality? How do we enforce governance, auditing, access in a one place where we can control and see and manage everything? This is very tough with the cloud. And so this is the open source that I'm contributing to, which I think really brings an innovating approach to working with data, something that we never thought about before, but actually was really, there because we had it with code.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, I'll have to get the link to the repos, so you're contributing to. What's that called, Adi?
Lake FS, so Lake File System.
Cool. I'll get the link off you. I'll associate a blog with each of these videos, so we'll put a link to that if you want to take a look at that, if you are interested in contributing as well. So, Adi, this has been a super conversation. Thank you so much for giving up your time and coming and saying hello to me. I've personally gained a lot of info from yourself on this particular episode, so I mean, hopefully people that are watching would have done as well. Before we wrap up, are there any last words of wisdom that you want to impart?
Yeah. Find a community that you love, that you can feel connected to, that you feel it's a good, level of that for you. And if you're not there yet, join it, because it's a life changer. So take the action, and if you are if you didn't join yet a community, please do. And if you are part of a community and you feel a little bit passive, so you're more into the passive listening phase, try to push yourself a little bit into asking questions, contributing, saying hi. I think it will be a really game changer for you in your career.
100%. Yeah. Do everything AD has just said. Absolutely agree. But thanks once again, AD. It's been a fantastic session today. Thanks for giving it your time, and I'll see you on the socials soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. It was fantastic to talk with you and learn from you as well. We'll see you online.
Yeah. Thanks, AD. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.